Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rev'd Up for Sunday, a lectionary podcast from two of the clergy and one digital missioner of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in New Canaan, Connecticut. I'm Rob Schwartz.
I'm Elizabeth Garnsey.
I'm John Kennedy.
And today, I believe it was Will Ferrell's fictional race car, Ricky Bobby, who said, "If you ain't first, you're last." And today, Jesus is switching that around a little bit. If you're first, you are last. And if you're last, you are first. We've heard these words, but what the heck is he talking about? Let's find out. Today's reading comes from Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 through 16. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' So they went. When he went out again about noon, and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock he went out and found others standing around, and he said to them, 'Why are you standing here idle all day?' They said to him, 'Because no one has hired us.' He said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard.' When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first.' When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now when the first came, they thought they would receive more. But each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, 'These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat.' But he replied to one of them, 'Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last.'" You know, it's really something to think about what we do here each week. We're taking, 2,000-year-old texts and trying to figure out what the context of them was, like cultures that are so foreign to us 2,000 years ago, and try to understand it through our own modern context. And I saw a meme that really kind of made me think of it. It said, 2,000 years from now, people will not understand the difference between butt dial and booty call. And this is exactly why the Bible is so hard to understand. And I thought,
You might have to explain those to my mother.
Yeah.
Who's listening. I'll explain that offline, Ma.
That's a great suggestion, Rob.
That's really
But
funny.
it's amazing just how we can, the little differences in words and phrases,
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
do they mean? So anyway, here we are. Who wants to situate us
Yeah.
kind of where we are from last week and kind of what lies around this passage?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Okay,
Take it
well,
away.
we have skipped an entire chapter
Yeah.
in Matthew, but we are in the beginning or close to the beginning of what's commonly labeled as the 5th section of Matthew's gospel. So we're moving out of Jesus's teaching on the church. We're moving into his journey to and ministry in Jerusalem. So he's not in Jerusalem yet, but he's on the way. So this is sort of the last chunk of his teaching before his passion. And here he is teaching about the nature of how rewards work and don't work in the Gospel of Matthew. This follows some other teachings, again, dialogue, where he introduces the famous saying, the first will be last and the last will be first. So that comes in chapter 19, which we entirely skipped over because we went from 18 and now we're in 20. But this parable is really an illustration of what that saying means.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And then it's followed by people who play out what Jesus was talking about after that too. Mm-hmm. So it's surrounded. I think It's got this whole theme of the first shall be last and the last shall be first, and the greatest among you will be the least. And so he's driving this point home in like 5 different ways.
It must be important.
It must be important. Yeah, something tells us it matters.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the parable that people have been wringing their hands over for 2,000 years. It's so maddening. I mean, it's sort of like the parable of, the prodigal son, because it's full of like our version of injustice. It's completely unfair. And so it's like Jesus is trying to, and it's a profound illustration of the way the kingdom works. And, it's a fun illustration too. If you've ever been to like LA or big cities where they've got a lot of labor surrounding the city and farmer kind of industries, there are a lot of migrant workers who hang around and farmers come and hire them. So it is kind of unfamiliar to us, but on the other hand, there are many modern places where this is still taking place. Landowners go and hire workers for hours or days at a time. And you can bet those landowners aren't doing what this landowner is doing with them at the end of the day, if they're paying any of them enough to begin with, but surely many of them are. I think Robert Farrar Capon, some of you listening might have heard of him. I know you guys know who that is. He wrote this beautiful book about the parables, and in it, he digs right into this one, just saying that if the world could be saved by bookkeeping or keeping score, it would have been saved by Moses. The law was great, but it didn't take evil out of the world, and the only way to take evil out of the world is for Jesus to come and absorb it into himself, like a black hole. And, because if we're paying evil for evil or repaying people what they've done to us, we're just doubling the evil in the world, and doubling the violence. And an eye for an eye, like, doubles the number of blind people in the world. So I think that's what this parable is sort of illustrating, is that it's this whole reversal of what's fair and unfair in our standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got this kind of, the structure of it's really neat to look at, because it's, you see him, he's very specific about what he's paying the first group, right? He's giving them their day's wage. And then, he starts going on throughout the day, and it's a little less specific. It's like, I'll pay you whatever's fair. They're like, I'm on board with that. And then I think there's this intentional suspense where, like, the very last ones, he doesn't say, what it's going to be. He's just like, well, come on, you need the work, let's go.
Yeah.
And then, in the second half of this, when he starts kind of revealing who's getting paid, he starts with the last one, because there's still that suspense there, because now the other ones are going, wait, if that's what they got paid, maybe what I was promised is actually going to be even more.
Right.
And I can't think that any of us would, I think we would all be like those first workers, grumbling and going, wait a second, I've been, busting my butt all day.
Right.
Why are they getting the same exact thing for only an hour's worth of work? And so I think that's what's so radical when we talk about, the kingdom of God and how it works and what Jesus is trying to convey in all these different teachings. It's that it's so countercultural to everything that, like, all our basic instincts.
Yeah.
And but like you said, between the prodigal son and things like this, it's like it's just like maddening to think if someone actually did that to us, we'd be just like the people who are getting annoyed in these stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
So do we think that Jesus is giving his ideal model of paying employees, of how to pay employees, or is this just a metaphor, or is it both?
You're gonna have a lot of employees who don't really want to work all that hard. I think if they're gonna go, well, all I have to do is show up at the very end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like decidedly not an advice column for how to run a business.
I agree.
Yes. Let's just put that off the table.
Yeah.
Although there might be some literalists out there who go, I've got the perfect way to run my good Christian business. I'm just going to pay everyone the same, no matter exactly how many hours they work and what time they show up.
Well,
you're going to get about 5 minutes of work out of them.
Other literalists will accuse them of socialism.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things I thought that was interesting, the more I tried to look at what people are saying about this out there, because I always kind of focused on, like, that first shall be last part as, like, that's the message. And people really looked at, like, all different things as, like, no, this is what this is trying to say. This is what this is trying to say. But it was just interesting to see that something that kind of seemed straightforward, I thought initially upon reading it was like, oh, people read so many different things into this.
I know.
Yeah. No, indeed, there is a lot going on. I mean, certainly I think Matthew must have in mind the inclusion of Gentiles into the church, into the Christian movement, because naturally the Jews were there first for a long time. worshiping the God of Israel and waiting for salvation from this God, and living the way that this God had given them to live. And then these other people just show up at the 11th hour, so to speak, and Jesus is saying, Matthew is saying, they get the same reward. They're on the same footing, because to think about faithfulness to God or adherence to this religion, or however you want to frame that, as about receiving an award is to totally miss it. Mm-hmm. Reward has nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. As I was thinking about this passage, I was thinking, like, this is a teaching to not be like Han Solo in the first Star Wars movie. I'm going to call episode 4 the first Star Wars movie, because it really is.
It is.
Yeah. And, Han Solo changes over the course of the movies, and he becomes a hero. But at first, he is not a hero. He's a mercenary. Mm-hmm. And Luke Skywalker, when they get to the Death Star, it's like, we got to go find the princess. And we got to risk our necks to do it, because this place is filled with, stormtroopers. And Han Solo's like, I'm only in it for the reward. This is crazy. This is suicide. Forget it. I'm staying here. Mm-hmm. So Jesus is saying, don't be like Han Solo in episode 4. Maybe, with your job. I don't think that he's really commenting on how we're supposed to feel about our jobs. People have all sorts of different jobs. But with regards to God, with regards to spiritual things, it's not about getting something. The spiritual life and the way of Jesus is laden with paradox. So you do receive a reward, but precisely when you stop caring about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really about union, and once you're in union with God, there's not more and less of it. Mm-hmm. There's just you're in the flow, you're in the river, you're in the stream, or you're not. And that's it.
Mm. Yeah. I think the pain of this parable is that it's not only about reward or about getting something, it's about getting everything. Yeah. Like everybody gets everything. Yeah. And that's what nobody likes. Like, Gore Vidal, I came across these lines from Gore Vidal. Whenever a friend succeeds, a little something in me dies.
Wow. That's sad.
And he said, it's not enough to succeed, others must fail. And it's just that schadenfreude that we have, that we're so jealous when other people get something. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't afraid to say it. Mm-hmm. We all kind of secretly have those feelings from time to time.
Yeah, it's true.
And so I don't know. To me, Matthew's setting out to accomplish the radical message, I think, of Jesus, of what the kingdom of God is, and just how disturbing it is to our way. Like Jesus comes into the world to completely upend everything that we think God is about. Yeah. And God is, as Richard Rohr says, God is the great allower. God allows tyrants to succeed. God allows me to make my own mistakes. Yeah. God allows all sorts of things to happen, and doesn't enforce God's own commandments. Mm-hmm. So the point is that, and at the end of the day, God is just waiting for all of us to walk in to this grace, this very spacious place where everything is available to everyone, and heaven is a joyful way of being, and it's a complete allowing of all that is, in order to realize the flow of God that can come to us and through us, and flow for other people too. So, it's just so unsettling. But once we kind of relax into that true idea of our connectedness to God, we realize it's the not allowing that's not allowed.
Yeah.
And if we don't want to be in the kingdom, we can go to hell, but we just go there. That's where we go. It's sort of like you step outside of the grace. Yes. So whether it's for Christians or Gentiles, it's really for the whole of humanity to realize, the way that we parse everyone into categories, and that we want some people to have what they deserve. And we always think that we deserve more. And we get so mad when people don't get less if we think they're supposed to get less. Yeah. So to me, it just, we can't understand it until we realize it really applies to the whole existence that we've created here.
I love this idea that, like you said, everybody gets everything. Everybody's given everything, and regardless of when you came into it, and I think even on a a secular level. That could be anything. If there's a cause you've been fighting for a really long time, and people have kind of come late to the game, or maybe they thought differently at one point, but now they're kind of on board, like, okay, welcome aboard, instead of being like, listen, I've put in the work, who are you? And I think like we see that so much in our culture. And so, that's not what the text is saying here. It's not thinking about a lot of these modern day things, but I think it certainly that concept applies in our world today.
It does. Yeah. Yeah, I was a fan of that band first before they were big.
Yeah, right.
I know, right?
Oh, now you like them.
Now I have to move on. Right. Can't like them now that everybody else does. Go ahead.
No, please.
I feel like there's a caveat worth mentioning here that when we say everyone gets everything, it's obvious in our world everyone does not get everything.
Oh, right.
And some get nothing, and everyone. So we're not talking about a Cadillac in every driveway or whatever today's equivalent is. That's a very old reference. I don't know if anybody even wants a Cadillac anymore. But,
know.
Everyone gets a Tesla Model Y.
That's right. Yeah.
There you go.
But
Elon didn't sponsor this.
Oh, sorry. Whatever.
Range Rover. Range Rover, I think, is the new Canaan equivalent.
A car and driver. But anyway, that's not the point of this either. That we're talking about this. I think Jesus is talking about the kingdom of heaven being a place where we're happy for the ones who come late to also receive, to also be welcomed equally. And that's the crux of the message, is like, when can we all move into heaven? Because we all keep a toe out being like, well, it's so unfair. And we can't leave it unsaid. It has to be named and called out.
Right.
So it's not really a material. And if it is a material thing, it's because we're not together already. Like, we're the ones who create the poverty and we create the separation and deprivation and violence. And so it's not like God is doling out material things to some populations.
No.
It's like humanity cannot come together in this way.
Right.
So far.
Right. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. And to this, everything being offered, I think the other side of it is it asks us for everything in return, which connects to how we struggle with the teaching like this. What the stumbling block is our ego, our egocentricity, which is a theme throughout the gospel, certainly throughout Matthew. Just a couple Sundays ago, we had, whoever wants to follow me must deny themselves, take up their cross and follow me. It's really getting our ego, our sense of self-importance and our self-centeredness out of the way. And as long as it's not out of the way, we will struggle with this, because we will want to be better or feel better, think we're better. Another Richard Rohr teaching, I think it was from Richard Rohr, is, the pernicious thing about the way our egos work is that it not only differentiates us from other people, it's not just enough to be different, we have to be better. Yeah. And as long as we're operating that way, forget it. We're out of the flow of grace. I think God's call to us is just to be swept up, like the Rev'd there, into the divine life, in which we are still ourselves. Our ego doesn't dissolve into something unrecognizable necessarily, but it's sense of separateness, its sense of concrete, I am me and these people are different, and I'm on my own mission and I'm looking out for me. That has to go. It has to be a sense of I'm just in the flow of this interconnected world that God has made, and everybody else is just as much a part of it. And I'm identified with everybody else because we all come from the same place, and God is calling us all to come together to the same place. A bit of Thomas Aquinas there, very simple but I think powerful frame for what creation and the universe and our lives really mean, which is that we come from God, and the dance, if you will, the path is to return to God. And that's so powerfully illustrated there. But as long as we're still, one toe out of the water, even like, but I kind of want to look out for me a little bit. I mean,
I know, right?
I can't totally trust this. I can't totally let go. Then we're in some sort of spiritual peril. There's a spiritual hazard to that. So Jesus, in other words, calls us to give everything in return. One commentator, well, I can name him because he's quite famous, N.T. Wright, I think quite brilliantly said of this parable that God does not make contracts with us. God makes covenants. And in this covenant, God promises, gives everything, but asks us for everything in return.
Right. I think part of returning to God or giving everything in return is an idea of being like God in return.
Yeah.
And we'd love to have a controlling God who's more fair, but to be like God is to just welcome all in and experience this flow outwards. And the text here where Jesus says, or the landowner says to the workers, "Are you envious because I'm generous?"
Right.
That's the opposite. It's like, how can we can't also be generous or have generous spirits because of God is so generous. And I think that's the
beautiful.
Kind of like when we were talking about forgiving, just last week, and it's not that I owe you because I'm forgiven. It's I want to pass that along to everybody else. So just as God is generous to us, can we be generous to others?
Good.
Can we share that with others? And real quick, because I got to throw in my T-shirt of the day here, or of the week here. I just went for something simple today, blessed, and I was wearing this. I was getting gas this morning on the way to work, and this guy sees my shirt and he goes, "Oh, I like that." And I look down and he goes, some days we feel a lot more blessed than others. And I said, "Yeah, that's true." And I said, "But isn't it nice to know that all of us are blessed just the same, And not in life, and like you were saying, like there's a lot of inequality in our world, and some people would certainly look at their lives and say, I don't see how this is blessed. But knowing that that's off that we do have God's blessing, that's with us regardless of any of that. And so I think that was kind of a powerful thing for me to take with that.
Very good.
T-shirt evangelism.
Yeah. There we go. That's
probably more effective than wearing a collar.
I know, right.
They're good. They're good conversation starters, at least.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we've got a lot of good stuff. I'm the guest preacher on Sunday,
That's right.
So I think you guys have given me a lot to think about and chew on throughout the weekend. We'll see what comes out of it.
Yeah, you're going to be great.
It'll be good.
Rob's
no
a great
doubt.
preacher, so don't miss church this Sunday.
Yeah, please come. And thank you for listening, and please like, share, and subscribe to this. Also, something we tried way back when we were getting ready for our 100th episode was a call-in line for people. So if you've got questions or comments about the show or the episode or anything you want to ask us, feel free to call. The number is 203-442-5002. That doesn't actually spell anything like I was hoping it would, like Rev'd up. That would have been perfect. That. But the number is in the description to this podcast, so you can look for it right there.
It's a voicemail line, right?
It's a voicemail line, so you're not going to get to talk to any of us.
Yeah, leave us a voicemail. We'll listen to it.
And but we look forward to hearing what you have to say. So until next week, take care.